Welcome to another episode of TBN 24 Special. Today, we know the New York City mayoral election only 4 weeks away. June 24th is the election. The current mayor, the former mayor, which is all well known, Andrew Cuomo, is also running. And there is a new contender who's surging in polls. And he is here with us in the studio. He's Zohran Mamdani. Welcome. He's a New York State Assembly, Queens District 36. He was here before, so this is not the first time. And we're going to have many questions with him today. Remember, June 24th is the election. So, Zohran, welcome once again.
Thank you.
It's good to see you after a long time. I hope you're doing well. Let's get into some of the important questions. I'm going to first ask you, why are you running? That would be my first question. And then, why do you think you're better than other candidates? We're going to talk about polls and all these things later. But right now, the Dems are faltering. The entire country, they have a very negative view of the Democrats. You are a Democrat, right? How does it, how do you separate from those things, those disappointing comments and things that Dems are accused of? And why should we trust you? Why should you trust you as a mayor of New York City?
So first of all, thank you so much for having me. It is always a pleasure to be here at TBN. And I am running to be the next mayor of this city, to make this city affordable. New York City is the most expensive city in the United States of America, the third most expensive in the entire world. And what we're seeing is that 1 in 4 New Yorkers are living in poverty. And we know that this is an issue that is disproportionately impacting Bangladeshi New Yorkers. As we've seen studies show, 75% of Bangladeshi-led households in New York City cannot afford to meet the basic cost of living. And that's because it's a cost of living that is skyrocketing. It is pushing New Yorkers out of our city and into places like New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania. I'm running to freeze the rent, to make buses fast and free, to deliver universal childcare, and to finally make this city affordable.
Right. These are all nice to hear. And many of us believe nowadays, especially the Trump administration, is telling over and over that these are the reasons this country is going down the drain. And this is what's draining our budget. So I would hear your response on this one. And when we hear the Democrats nowadays, the centrics, they sound like the rightists of the Republican. Can you please shed some light on it? And how do you differentiate from them?
I think the first way of differentiating from the center wing of this party is by being very clear that we are fighting for working people. Working people are at the heart of our politics.
Right.
And the reason that Democrats are historically unpopular, the reason that we lost the presidential election, is because our party abandoned those working people many years ago. And this campaign is about bringing those same people from the margins of our politics into the mainstream of our politics. And what has been so disappointing has been to see, in a moment when New York City needs to be led by a mayor willing to fight Donald Trump, willing to protect our city and its people, we have instead had a mayor like Eric Adams, who is collaborating with the Trump administration, and a former governor like Mr. Cuomo, who is being funded by the same people who put Donald Trump into DC. And we don't need those same billionaires to control both DC and New York City. We need to have a mayor who is funded by the people of New York City. And that's what I've been proud to be, as we've raised $8 million for more than 20,000 donors at an average donation of around $80 per person.
Right. I'm going to come back to this issue of working for the people, just like you sounded, and we're going to dig deep a little bit. Now, I want to hear from you. I know, because I'm in a field of journalists, and many others know you. But tell us about yourself a little bit, your background, and I want you to make a case to make us understand why this community, especially Bangladeshi, Pakistani, Indian community, they're listening and watching today's program, they would trust you, and then you would become more favorable to us, generally speaking, right? Please.
So I was born in Kampala, Uganda, in East Africa. I came to New York City when I was 7 years old. I've grown up in this city. This is the city that I love. And I got my citizenship in this city not so many years ago, after having graduated from middle school and going to high school at Bronx Science, and eventually coming back after I went to college in Maine at Bowdoin College. And some of the work that I've done has been in local politics itself, working to elect the first South Asian city council members. We tried many, many years ago, and ultimately we've succeeded in seeing in 2021 Shahana Hanif and Sheikha Krishna. But my work led me to becoming a member of the Muslim Democratic Club of New York. I was a board member as well. And I eventually went on to become a foreclosure prevention housing counselor. I worked with low to moderate income homeowners, mostly South Asian homeowners across Queens in Jackson Heights and in Richmond Hill, working to make sure we could keep them in their homes. And I was proud in 2020 when I ran for the state assembly to be the first South Asian man elected to any position in New York City. And I serve in the New York State Assembly. I'm in my third term, and I'm now running as the first South Asian elected, the first Muslim elected official to ever run for mayor. And ultimately, I know that our communities want the same things as every other community: equality and respect. But we know that in this country, in this city, you are not given those things. You have to win those things. And June 24th is an opportunity to win them. Because in a city of 8.5 million people, we know that more than 100,000 are of Bangladeshi descent. We know that close to 1 million are Muslim. And yet, for a long time, we have not seen that reflected both in our politics and in our voting. You know, if you look at the statistics of Muslim voters, there are about 200,000 Muslim Democrats. In the last election, only about 7% voted. And I will not blame anyone in our community, because I know oftentimes it feels like there is not much to vote for. Oftentimes it feels like voting is an act of sacrifice or concession. This is a campaign that shows we can actually vote for something. We can vote for a city that we can afford, and vote for a city where we show that Muslims don't just belong in the 5 boroughs of the city. We also belong in City Hall.
Okay, you brought in a good point. The last election, presidential election, we were very, very disappointed. We, meaning when I'm saying the South Asian community, especially the Muslim community across the country, very disappointed for the action of Joe Biden, openly calling himself is a Zionist, and keep destroying civilians, children, women, killing hundreds of thousands of people. I'm talking about last 75 years, not October 7th is not the start. And it has been very difficult for Muslim Americans to vote for Democrats, and they choose another devil. It's like lesser of two evils, right? So Trump. And we have not seen, we have been seeing how crazy the policies can get. How worse can it get? How bad can be a administration can become, right? And it's unfolding in front of our very eyes. I want to ask you, what is your stand on Gaza? It is a situation when you speak for the humanity, speak for the equality, you become the other. You become the person who is not American, who's anti-American. Tell me your position in Gaza.
My position is one of outrage at the continued war crimes we see each and every day. Many New Yorkers woke up today to see footage of a young Palestinian girl being burned alive as the Israeli military bombed a school. And ultimately, it's a position that is based on my belief in universal human rights. We have to be able to fight for justice and equality and freedom and safety for all people, and that has to include Palestinians. And too often when you speak up for those universal human rights and you dare to apply them to Palestinian human rights, you are caricatured as if it is a position out of bigotry, when in fact it's a position based out of humanity. And we see even in this moment, in a moment when we need a mayor who recognizes the humanity of all New Yorkers, we have instead had a mayor who has picked and chosen when to recognize that humanity, and has used the powers of his office as well as of his bully pulpit to further repress those who speak out against this injustice. And we've seen that just recently with a number of musicians who were slated to perform concerts here in New York City who had spoken up against these last 16 months of horror and beyond that. And they have had their concerts canceled.
Of course.
And it is being done in the name of security, and yet we know it is very much in the name of repression. And this is a moment, as you've said, where Donald Trump preyed upon the despair of so many across this country, a despair that was also motivated by the continued American foreign policy to subsidize these war crimes. And he has preyed upon that despair to only deliver that very despair at a new level. And seeing it also here in our own city, where we've had Palestinian New Yorkers like Mahmoud Khalil be detained by ICE in his own apartment building lobby on the basis of no charge at all, simply by virtue of being Palestinian. And he continues to languish in an ICE detention facility in Louisiana while he should be at home with his wife and raising their child.
A newborn.
Yes.
Great. So when and if you become the mayor of New York City, you'll have a very difficult task because you have an AIPAC lobby, you have the right-wing administration. How, in this scenario, how would you be able to help the cause of Palestinian here, especially in the US, especially in New York City? Stop being harassing the innocent people, taking away our rights to speak the freely, which is the First Amendment right. What can you do?
So I am running to be the mayor of New York City.
Correct.
And to deliver a city that is affordable, a city where dignity is something that every New Yorker has. And what we have seen is that the inability of our current mayor, the inability of our former governor to recognize that innate humanity in every New Yorker, and that humanity must be extended also to not just Palestinian New Yorkers, but Palestinians at large, has meant a willingness to curtail the very freedoms and rights that make us proud to be Americans. The First Amendment is at the core of our country's constitution. And yet we have seen a mayor and a former governor willing to throw it away if it means being able to stand in opposition to those very human rights. What I will do is ensure that we stop sending police officers onto college campuses, stop brutalizing New Yorkers who are exercising their First Amendment rights, and to finally bring an end to whatever actions there may be that have brought our city out of compliance with international law. Because we have seen a mayor who not only went to meet with Israeli settler leaders, but promised greater cooperation with them, which is a flagrant violation of international law. We need a mayor focused on New York City and one who has consistent politics in fighting for the people of New York, no matter who they are, what they believe in, or where they're from. Yeah,
the reason I asked you the centric Democrats would sound like right-wingers of Republicans is because we all know what happened to Jamal Bowman. Right? A good guy, good politician, cares for people, was defeated in the primary. So we know this. We, the general population, the regular people, we see it. You can deceive us. There's a reason people don't like them right now. And it has nothing to do with Donald Trump. Nothing. Nancy Pelosi, nobody likes her because of who she is, or who she has been, right? I'm going to go, you brought in a good point about the students. Columbia University finally capitulated. Done. Okay, they bow down to Donald Trump and they're doing what he wants them to do. Students, on the other hand, are speaking freely and demanding what they're demanding, equality, human rights, and see the fair and free world, right? We recently saw Trump administration said Harvard, no funding for Harvard. They can enroll international students, basically trying to put immense pressure so it breaks down to his demands, right? But the students are the ultimate sufferer. What can you do to help them if you become the mayor? Ultimately,
what students of New York City deserve is a mayor who will treat them with the same equality and respect that every New Yorker deserves. And what we've seen, however, is a mayor that is interested in trampling on the First Amendment rights that those students have, that every New Yorker has. And so much of this has been done in the name of safety. We have to remember that when Mayor Eric Adams sent the NYPD onto Columbia's campus, he did so invoking public safety. And yet his decision to do so brought those students to more danger than they had ever been over the last 16 months. And I say that because one of those police officers discharged their weapons in the course of being deployed. Multiple students were hospitalized. And ultimately, we were having the city's police force, which has a critical role to play in creating actual public safety, which should be focusing on the 7 major categories of crime. Instead, being deployed into a university campus for the violation of university codes, not the actual city's criminal legal code. That is not the job of our city or our police force. And ultimately, what these students also deserve is a mayor who will not cut the funding for their education. Because if you are a CUNY student, you have faced two different kinds of attacks on your rights as a student. You've faced the mayor deploying the strategic response group to your campus when you were exercising your First Amendment rights. And you've also faced a mayor who's cut funding for City University of New York by about $100 million. And we know that Mr. Cuomo will be no different. Mr. Cuomo is a man who ran this state with the same kind of cuts to the public sector. And in the time he should have spent reflecting on what led him to resign in disgrace, he has instead spent that time joining Benjamin Netanyahu's legal defense team to protect Netanyahu from charges from the International Criminal Court.
Right. So you're talking about budgets and all these things, human rights and First Amendment rights, and how you are going to see it and how you're going to protect it. Now, let me ask you a question, since we're talking about budget. We know that the federal budget will be cut short, and New York City, New York State generally, will lose funding. How would you actually go about this to implement your agendas? Because they implement, there are many things that you want to do that will require federal budget.
So the city has a budget of about $115 billion. Close to about 7% of it is funded by federal grants, maybe about $8 billion in total. This is money that is critically necessary to provide social services, to provide so much of the services that keep working class people afloat across these 5 boroughs. And we deserve to have a mayor that will fight back against those cuts. We've had a mayor right now that sometimes has had to abandon his trips to Washington, D.C. because he has to return to his financial fundraiser for his campaign because she's being raided by the feds. We need a mayor whose focus is squarely on New Yorkers. And that's why we've also proposed raising $10 billion in new funds through 2 primary ways. The first is to tax the most profitable corporations. These are corporations that make millions of dollars a year in profit, not small businesses. And we would tax them at the same level as they are taxed in New Jersey, 11.5%. That, matching that New Jersey corporate tax rate, raises $5 billion. Then what we would do is also raise income taxes on the top 1% of New Yorkers. These are New Yorkers who are earning $1 million or more a year. We would raise them by just $20,000, flat 2% increase. Together, these 2 taxes raise $9 billion. What that does is it pays for our entire economic agenda, and it starts to Trump-proof our city for those cuts when they come, so we can fight back against Trump and know we still have money that we can actually use to provide.
So less dependency on the federal budget, but if that doesn't happen, it's good. But you can actually become self-sufficient by raising some taxes on fairly.
Yes.
And then be more fluid in terms of budgeting and
absolutely.
stuff like that. Okay.
In order to fight, you also need that fiscal independence.
Correct. Okay. So there are a few candidates. In the beginning, we talked about, we have Andrew Cuomo, who has sexual allegations, misconducts, when he was in as a mayor. We have current mayor,
Eric Adams,
excuse me, thank you. And he has abuse of power issues, corruption issues, allegations, right? How do you, but still Cuomo is, topping the poll. Why do you think it is?
I think polls at this point in a race with 4 weeks or so to go are a reflection more of name recognition than they are of support.
Right.
We have to remember that Mr. Cuomo is a former governor who is the son of a former governor.
Of course.
So every New Yorker knows Mr. Cuomo's name. Now, from the beginning of this race, we were at 1% in the polls. Now we are in second place in poll after poll after poll. 6 weeks ago, Mr. Cuomo was beating us by 40 points in the final round. 2 weeks ago, he was beating us by just 20 points. We cut it in half. And now we're seeing that we are cutting that 20-point gap into 12 points. We are seeing that with just a few weeks to go until Election Day, we are on the trajectory to make this a single-digit race and to win on June 24th.
Yeah. I was watching Fox. You were in Fox 2 days ago, most likely. And then CNN, they're also doing the same thing. I was looking at it. I think it's going to come down to single digit in a few days. Now, let's talk about law and order in New York. New Yorkers think that the law and order situation is not good. It's going down, and there is no protection. There was a few years ago, we had this voice for defunding cops. Now we're saying, no, we need more cops. How would you make New York safe?
police have a critical role in creating that public safety. And when I speak to those officers, I also hear that we are relying on them for the failures of the social safety net.
Right.
We are asking officers who joined the force to deal with the 7 major categories of crime to instead become social workers and mental health professionals. And part of that reliance, it is leading us to a place where we do not have clearance rates that should be as high as they are.
Right.
In fact, we are struggling to solve many of these crimes.
Right.
And so what we're going to do is allow the police to focus on their actual jobs of those 7 major categories of crime, and to create a Department of Community Safety, one that will pursue aggressively evidence-based strategies that have been proven effective across the country, focusing on 5 key areas: the mental health crisis, homelessness, gun violence, hate crimes, and victim services. Addressing those crises in a whole of government approach with a evidence-based policy that will actually deliver public safety.
Donald Trump has declared war on immigrants, which is a federal issue, but now it has become the state issue and therefore our issue, everybody's issue. How do you combat that?
You know, I would be, if elected, the first immigrant mayor in generations to lead this city. And I would be proud not only in who I will be, but also what I will do. I will stand up for our sanctuary city policies, policies which have kept us safe for decades. And what I will also ensure is that the city starts to provide legal representation for immigrant New Yorkers currently in detention proceedings, because we've seen that when the city stands up and when they actually provide that kind of representation, the chances of that New Yorker coming home to their family increase by 11 times. We need to keep families together, not allow Donald Trump to rip them apart.
So that's going to be your role, that's going to be your policy, and that's how you're going to work on these issues, especially when it comes to immigrant policies and stuff.
Yes, when Donald Trump comes to attack immigrant New Yorkers, I will stand up and defend them. And whether that means an immigrant New Yorker who's being detained on the basis of being Palestinian and speaking up for human rights like Mahmoud Khalil, or it means a New Yorker who is being detained purely on the basis of the cruelty of this administration and its desire to infringe havoc upon all New Yorkers, we will stand up.
Yeah. So the viewers, we're talking about ICE, especially when I talk about Donald Trump and the immigration policy, basically ICE raids everywhere. Legal, illegal, it doesn't matter. He's creating an environment of fear. I'm going to come back to our local issues. One of the biggest issues that we see, you are here, we're here, not far from Jackson Heights. The congestion is terrible. People are still not obeying traffic rules. So you have double park, triple park, and causing serious issues. I have not seen any improvement last 10 years. What would you do?
There are a few things. The first thing we have to do is make sure that we make our public transit not only efficient, not only effective, but also excellent.
Right.
There are many New Yorkers who are not riding the bus, taking the subway, because they don't believe that they can get to where they're going fast enough. And as someone who won more than $100 million to increase our subway service, to secure the first of its kind fare-free bus pilot, we saw that when you make public transit more affordable, when you make it more reliable, you will have more New Yorkers actually using it. And when that happens, you can actually get some of these cars off the road, which also reduces congestion for all drivers. Finally, it's really important that we ask ourselves on what are the economic incentives that are currently pushing so much of the disorder within the way we address our streets.
Correct.
I'll give you an example. Many New Yorkers have spoken to me about e-bikes and spoken to me about how we need to find a way to follow the rules of the road. One of the key things that is incentivizing disobeying those rules is companies like DoorDash and their models, which force delivery workers to deliver far more than they can while following the rules of the road. I will actually hold those kind of companies to account. Not Mr. Cuomo, who has actually just received $1 million donation from DoorDash, money that is being donated with the clear intention of influencing labor regulations and street safety.
We're at the end of our program. People who are watching, what would be your message to them?
I would tell them that on June 24th, you have an opportunity to win a city that you can actually afford, to win a city where you will be led by someone who sees the humanity in each and every person. And finally, to win a city where you can return to the dream that brought you here so many years ago. It's time that we prove that this city can be more than the crumbs that so many of our neighbors cannot even live off of. This can be a city that continues to live, that continues to dream, and then continues to thrive.
Whoever watching today and in social media later on, Zohran Mamdani running for New York City Mayor. The election is June 24. So be part of the election. Go there, choose your candidate, whoever you like, but be do take part in the election. Zohran Mamdani, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I know it's busy time and you make time for ourselves.
Always.
We thank you and wish you good luck.
Thank you so much.
দর্শক, আপনারা এতক্ষণ অনুষ্ঠানটি দেখছিলেন, আশা করি অনুষ্ঠানটি ভালো লেগেছে। দেখা হবে পরবর্তী অনুষ্ঠানে। শুভরাত্রি।
TBN 24 টেলিভিশন দেখতে আজই কল করুন 7187776556। লগ ইন করুন www.totalcablebd.com।
নিউ ইয়র্ক থেকে সম্প্রচারিত TBN 24 টেলিভিশন বিশ্বজুড়ে বাঙালির কণ্ঠস্বর।